The Holy Land is a place that is sacred to Jews, Christians, and Muslims. It's been a destination for pilgrims from every corner of the world. But the Holy Land is also a place of tremendous conflict, chaos, and controversy. In November 1947, when the United Nations voted in favor of partitioning the land into two states, one Jewish and one Arab, the Jews accepted the plan, but the Arabs rejected it. After the new Jewish state declared independence in 1948, 5 Arab nations launched a war against it. Israel survived, and since then has faced numerous other attacks. But many throughout the world have continued to debate Israel's claim to the territory and have condemned its treatment of the Palestinians. Some have even accused Israel of being an apartheid state. As a Christian who has always supported Israel's right to exist, I was challenged to look deeper into the conflict and to listen to the stories and perspectives from people on both sides. And this is what I discovered on my journey. Growing up here as an Israeli Jew, what were you taught about the Palestinians?
We were told, on one hand, we feared the Palestinians because we were viewed as potential attacks coming from them. But when we grew up to meet them and to learn who they are, we discovered human beings on the other side. And most of them are not terrorists. They might not love us, but we can live with them.
When I was growing up, we were farmers. We had Palestinians who came working with my dad in the fields. I would consider them as human beings, I guess. People who's working for a living to provide for their families. Like, same as my dad was.
Growing up, what were you taught about the Palestinians?
That they hate all Jewish people. And they want to kill all of us.
I was taught about the Palestinians that they're human beings like us. And we have to treat them with respect as we treat any other people around the world.
99% of the Israeli parents educate their kids to be good people, not to hate anybody. As that's most of the people. You know, and also in the States where you came from, you have crazy people from both sides.
In the West Bank, what are you taught towards Israel and the Jewish people?
It's the stereotype that grows up with you, that you are the enemy of the Israelis and the Israeli is your enemy. That is how your grandfather was thinking and your parents, that's the flow. It's not easy to get rid of.
In your school books, did you learn anything about the Jewish people being here a long time ago?
No, you know, it's before 2 centuries, it's non-Jewish in Palestine. It's maybe it's 1 century only.
والله أنا بشوف اليهود تعاملهم غير زي بحبوش وطن فلسطين بحبوش فلسطينيين.
بني آدمين ناس بيعرفوش الرحمة صعوبة يفهموا الواحد لغتهم السلاح والقوة ما بفهموا بالحكي المناقشات معدومة عندهم بس سلاح.
نعرف عن اليهود إنه يحتل الشعب يحتل الأرض.
What percentage of Israelis genuinely hates Arabs and Palestinians?
Maybe 60.
At least 10%. That's what I think.
Something like 10%?
Just around. There's always that 10% of people doing the other way.
I think most of the people don't really hate them. They more are angry at them we feel hurt by them. We feel attacked by them. Even though it looks like we're attacking them, we're just defending ourselves. I don't think anybody just hates them for no reason.
I know Israelis who have personal views that maybe life would be better if the Palestinians weren't here, but I don't know anyone who really genuinely hates Palestinians.
I don't have hate for a certain race or culture. Do I hate Mahmoud Abbas? I probably do hate him, right? But just because I hate him, it doesn't mean that I hate, the other, Mahmoud that lives in the next town, that's driving down the street right next to me. I don't hate him.
Look, if people sitting here in quiet, no problem. It's like you, when you come from California to here, it's wonderful, no problem. But if you sit here and I'm afraid to go in this market just because in 1 second I can be cutted with knife because I'm Jew?
What percentage of the Palestinian population genuinely hates Israelis?
كلهم كل الشعب الفلسطيني بيكره إسرائيل. You can say like 70%.
70?
Yes.
Okay.
ما فيش فلسطيني بحب دولة إسرائيل. هاي لابد منها.
It's nice people, but the problem is not with the Jewish, with the Zionists. We don't have any problem between Palestinian or Jewish. This is not the problem. The problem with just the Zionists. That's it.
Zionists are Jews who have longed and advocated for an independent state within their ancestral homeland. This longing was affirmed by the UN in 1947, but many Arabs to this day believe that the establishment of a Jewish state in a territory that was once controlled by Muslims is an injustice against their people, especially the expansion of Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria, also known as the West Bank.
احنا ما بنكره اسرائيل، احنا بنكره عمايل اسرائيل، احنا ناس بدنا نعيش، بدنا السلام، بدنا حقنا.
I hate the Zionists, but I don't hate the Jewish.
Ah, okay.
Because the Jewish is person like me. He have a mother, he have a father, he want to life. But the Zionists, this is the cancer.
أول إشي اليهود كشعب يعني كفي بعض ناس إحنا ما بنكرههم، إحنا بنكره السياسيين الإسرائيليين اللي بيعملوا في سياسات تخلي الشعب الفلسطيني والشعب بعض الشعب اليهودي إنه يكره.
How do you personally feel towards Palestinians?
I don't feel any anger or grudge towards them, but the terrorists in particular. I do feel that we should be thriving for peace.
I feel sorry for the Palestinians for living also in fear, and also to want all time to have independence.
We have what we're living for, and they have what they're living for, and as long as they don't cause or we don't cause any problems with each other, then let's go on living.
The majority want to live in peace. I'm sure of that. But in the Arab world, it doesn't work like that. The majority doesn't have anything to do with real life. It's not a democracy.
What do you feel towards Israel?
يعني احنا بشر زينا زيكم. من حقنا نعيش ومن حقهم يعيشوا.
ما بشعرش تجاه إسرائيل يعني بسكره.
وبالتالي اللي بيحكوا عنه الحل الأوسط إنه نعيش في دولة واحدة ولا يمكن تصير لأنه العنصرية موجودة.
إسرائيل أنا لو أمسك صهيوني ولا إسرائيلي بقتله قتل موت. أنا بكرههم ما بحبش إسرائيل.
On my journey, I spent time in many of the cities situated along Route 60, what many call the Biblical Highway, which runs through Judea and Samaria. Rights to this territory have been disputed by both Israelis and Palestinians for decades. One city along this highway that has been a center of significant tension is Hebron, where 3 generations of Israel's founding patriarchs and matriarchs were buried. Hebron is also where David was anointed king of Israel in the late 9th century BCE. For Muslims, in addition to their strong connection to Abraham, some regard Hebron as a stopping point along the Prophet Muhammad's miraculous night journey to Jerusalem. Here, I met with Rabbi Yishai Fleisher, a local resident who is passionate about the historical connection that Jews have to this city.
Shalom. This is the original Hebron. If you look at this place, you'll see 500-year-old buildings. 80% of Hebron is under total Palestinian control. 20% of the city is patrolled by the Israeli army. You see that antenna up there?
Yeah.
Okay, and there's a base right up there. Yeah. Okay, and these bases look down onto the Jewish community that's like a little tiny street, a little ghetto, if you will. And make sure that we don't get sniped at, we don't get shot at, we don't get
So you have the high
killed.
places to protect.
We have the high places in this 20%.
Yep.
But we live all together, the Jews live in 3% of the city. A lot of people blame us that they say, look, Arabs can't walk in every part of your street. There's a few parts of the streets that are sensitive, so the army blocks the Arabs from walking in. We can't walk in 97% of the city. 97% of the city is a no-go zone. We're not allowed to go out there because we're Jewish, ethnically. I mean, that to me is the greatest apartheid in this region. Who's buried here? Todd, are you solid on this? Who's buried here?
Abraham.
Abraham?
Yeah.
Who else?
Isaac and Jacob.
Our father, Abraham, he's the joint father of the Arabs, the Jews, and anybody who believes in the Abrahamic faiths.
Right.
It really is one of the most important buildings to all of humanity.
Yeah, I hear this is actually ground zero of the conflict.
That's right, that's right. This is the root of Isaac and Ishmael, the two brothers. Okay, so we are cousins with our Arab cousins, right. Indeed. This is a town that really brings us all together, but because we all want to be the true sons of Abraham. Everybody wants to be the firstborn son. Everybody wants to be the real Israel, okay? So it might be the Christians, and it might be the Muslims, it might be the Jews. They all want to be the chosen son, so we all fight over who gets daddy's love. 1267, very important date. The Mamluks come in. They're a kind of Muslim war class from Egypt. They take over this area. They kick out the Jews and the Christians out of this building. Now that is chutzpah, okay? This is my pappy. This is my parents are buried here. The mamas and the papas are buried here. And this is a Jewish building on top of that.
Seems like colonialism.
We're out of this building for 700 years. 1492.
Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
Correct, good. Okay, we're back to school. And also 1492.
The Jews were kicked out of Spain.
Jews are kicked out of Spain by?
Spanish Inquisition.
That's, well, yes, but that's...
Ferdinand and Isabella.
That's right, so the Christians, okay? The Christians,
right.
Catholics are kicking us out of Spain.
Yes.
And the Jews are looking for a new home. Many of them end up in Istanbul, which was once Constantinople, right? Okay. In 1507, the Turks, the Ottomans, capture the land of Israel in this place, and the Jews are like, yippee! I could be a Turkish Ottoman subject, which they'll protect me, but live in the Holy Land. Yep. So the Jews are back, they're strong, already 1540, 500 years ago. And then in the year 1929, something bad happened. We had been living with Arabs, with the Muslims for a long time, but there was a dude who stirred up a horrible riot. His name was Haj Amin al-Husseini. He stirred up a jihadist riot, killed 67 Jews. It was really bad. And you know who's in charge at the time? The Brits. And the Brits say we can't protect the Jews, and they kick us out. So in 1967, we come back to this town, exactly 700 years after we kicked out of our own building, and then we're back. Here's the question. Is it liberation or occupation? Which one is it? Did we steal this building from somebody else? Did we dispossess other people? Or are we recouping what was rightfully ours? In 2016, I was standing over there next to that tree, and I was with an Australian journalist. Australian journalist says to me, Mr. Fleisher, don't you know you're living in occupied land? My heart fell inside my chest. It just fell. Why? Because I thought to myself, let me get this straight. You're a white Australian, right? You guys came to your country like 200 years ago. There was an indigenous people. You decimated them. Then you planted a flag and said, let's put some shrimp on the barbie, right? And here you are saying to me, and who am I? I'm a Jew. And this building behind me is the greatest proof of the bona fide claim that we are an indigenous people in this place. Our fathers and mothers are buried here 3,800 years ago. And this building was built 2,000 years ago by Jews. And you're telling me that I'm an occupier in a city that I've lived in for about 3,500 years? That's absurd. We're in the Jewish cemetery of Hebron. Jews and Arabs had lived in Hebron in relative peace for hundreds of years. In fact, people would move to Hebron because they thought, okay, Jews and Arabs kind of get along here. There started coming around messages that the Jews are killing Arabs in Jerusalem, that they're trying to take over the Al-Aqsa Mosque, that they're doing all kinds of things. And then what happened is that this riot spread. It was like a mob. These people weren't just killed and that's it. They were hacked to death. They lost fingers, arms, rapes. And there was a reason for that. It wasn't just because of bloodlust. It was so that those pictures would get out and scare people. The person behind the ideology of this mob was a man named Haj Amin el-Husseini. He didn't believe in the partition plan. He didn't believe in a two-state solution. He believed in annihilation. And a little known fact about Haj Amin el-Husseini is that he was going to be the person who was going to set up concentration camps in Israel to kill the Jews of Israel and the Jews of the Middle East. There were Arabs who pushed back against that jihad. There was an old Arab named Abu Shakir. He stood in front of this massive, mob, and stood in front of them and said, "You will not enter my house." They're like, "You're hiding Jews." He says, "You're not going to enter my house." They took a machete and chopped at his leg, and he lost his leg. But they left that house alone, and he did that because he was an Arab who was a non-jihadist. That's what I'm always trying to explain to people, that don't think this is a racial battle. This is an ideological, religious idea that has infiltrated into Arab and Muslim minds, but it doesn't have to be. There are many Arabs and Muslims who didn't think and continue today not to think that way. We're still fighting the jihadist ideology, which today is in the form of Hamas, which is really the ruling party of the city.
Last time I was in Hebron, I was told by the Palestinians that the settlers consistently throw rocks down on them.
There is sometimes violence from our side towards the Arabs. The official line of the Jewish community is that we are 100% against. We condemn that kind of violence. We're against vigilantism. No ifs, ands, or buts. However, in reality, here in the Middle East, when somebody pushes you and you don't push back, you show weakness. And there are people in this community who say, no, you're not going to push me around. I have every right to live here, and we're not going to be victims of the jihad.
How do you think radical Islam contributes to the conflict?
People like Hamas, people like Jihad Islami, and even small parties in Palestine, which they are most religious, these people believe that this is a land which is Allah has given to the Muslims. Not just this land, all of these lands, all the Middle East and all the world even. They will take it step by step. If you go to the mosques of Gaza, you will listen to the voices of imams calling for that we will conquer over Rome one day. So if they are looking for a Rome, what about Tel Aviv? If they are looking for the United States and New York to take over it one day, what about Jerusalem?
The root cause of the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians, it's a religious, ideological conflict. Islam is very simple, black and white. You either have Dar al-Islam or Dar al-Harb, the house of Islam or the house of the sword. So either you're going to come under Islamic sovereignty or you're going to come under Islamic sword. This is the same reason that all these nations said, no, we'll never give citizenship to Palestinian refugees from 1948. If we do that, then we're recognizing Jewish sovereignty in this area of the Middle East, which is very close to the Caliphate, whether you say it's in Saudi Arabia or Iran, it doesn't matter. This whole area is Dar al-Islam, the house of Islam as far as they're concerned. And so there's zero compromise, zero willingness within Islam to give up a centimeter of the land to any other sovereignty. This is the reason that the partition plan of the United Nations was completely rejected by the Arab League in 1947, and it's the reason today that the Palestinian leadership is so reticent to actually come to the table and make peace with Israel, because the Islamic extremist voices within their society, for them, that would be completely unacceptable.
I mean, radical Islam has a part to play, not a small part, right? Not a small part.
The radicalism, I think, has completely emerged from the lack of us being able to reach any progress on real peace in this land.
But what about ISIS? I mean, the whole Middle East is being affected by this, and it has nothing to do with the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. It has to do with the caliphate, like sacred space, like taking over the land.
What is the conflict of ISIS? What created ISIS?
I don't know exactly what created ISIS.
I would say what created ISIS, again, is the lack of political, economic progress in countries like Iraq and like Syria that just create fertile ground for groups like this to grow.
With the Christian community, especially in the West Bank, there's no mention of radical Islam. They only talk about the occupier. They only talk about Israel. It seems to be the elephant in the room that they're not talking about.
I live in the Middle East. In the Middle East, there is radical Islam. Let me be clear, that's not most of the people. The jihadi, Salafi, Sunni, 3 different words, that are the ones that are the extreme radical Islam, exist throughout the Middle East and in the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip and in the state of Israel. The question is what you do with it. In Israel, we have, over the last 5 years, arrested 24 Israeli citizens who became extreme radical Islamists, and they're in jail. It's against the law to call for the annihilation of people who are not radical Islamists, for example. I have never seen the Palestinian Authority arrest one Palestinian for being radical Islamist that wants to go join the Islamic State, that wants to go join Al-Qaeda, as 2 different ones that we've heard of before. When we look at it from the Israeli perspective, that just adds on in because it's their own subversive portion of their population that in horrific potential could become a strong force, certainly in the Gaza Strip, but also in the West Bank.
When we unfortunately, blindly, started attacking the civil, those people actually, who had nothing to do in this conflict, they are like me. I'm not holding a gun, and they're not holding guns. They might be paramedics, they might be doctors, they might be nurses, they might be like any normal person. And that's the only difference. The blind hate makes you attack anyone just because he's a Jew.
We need to de-escalate the situation by changing the environment, by changing how people feel. If people feel that there is a value for their life, they will not do such things. But when they feel there is no value, then they can go and die easily.
And we have voices which you will never listen about it, which is speaking the truth, speaking what I believe it's a truth, which is it's our problem too, it's our history too, it's a problem in our history, in our ideology, in the way we think about it, it's also a problem. We have to recognize that. We have to just confess our mistakes. Because if we didn't confess our mistakes, we will continue to do it. And we will continue leading our people to death.
What's your greatest hope for this area?
I hope that one day this will all be under Israeli sovereignty. I hope that this city will have Arabs and Jews living in it, but I hope that these houses will be fixed up and turned into an incredible artist colony. Look at this place. These domes, these arches.
Yeah, I could see that.
It's just majestic. What's got to go is the element of jihad, okay?
Yeah.
And if there's hate in our heart, we got to let that go as well.
Spending time with Yishai was pretty enlightening and taught me that animosity toward the Jews within the land started before the State of Israel was reestablished in 1948. And from what the Palestinians told me, that animosity continues to this day. But I'm also learning that many Arabs have a strong connection to this land that goes back hundreds of years, which makes some of the anger they feel understandable. At the moment, the divide between the Jews and the Arabs in this land runs very deep. But my faith teaches me to be a peacemaker and a truth seeker. C.S. Lewis wrote, "Seek unity, and you will find neither unity nor truth. Seek the light of truth, and you will find both unity and truth." My hope for both Arabs and Jews in the Holy Land is that they would seek the light of truth, and that it would compel them towards unity and peaceful coexistence.